Mandalam 1, Suktam 23A. Rishi, Medhatithi Kanva, Devata, Indra, Vayu, Marudgana, Mitra, Varuna, Chandas, Gayatri. Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 1.
Potent somas. Soma extracts mixed with milk do come verily. Vayu, set out to drink these. Vayu, the force. From the explicatory meaning provided in different Sanskritam dictionaries and the depiction of the manner of its functioning, Vayu has more to do with wind than with air, and in particular the forces at play that cause and sustain wind, rather than wind itself. Like the five Vayus within our bodies, forces that propel with definite distinguishing characteristics in the regions above Earth's surface are also collectively called Vayu, but have specific appellations. They are 1. Avaha, having no stream; 2. Pravaha, streaming forth; 3. Samvaha, guiding or conducting; 4. Udvaha, supporting, holding, or lifting up; 5. Vivaha, remove, take away, or drive off; 6. Parivaha, overflow; 7. Paravaha, inflow. The suffix in each of these words, vaha, which means to carry, is significatory to the notion that Vayu is a driving force. A similar argument applies to the five Vayus that act within our bodies: prana, apana, vyana, udana, and samana. The common suffix here is ana, which refers to a force that causes cyclical reciprocal movement, like breathing. It is this class of forces that is deified and ascribed the name Vayu, and also sought to be invigorated by this and the following verses. The first of the set of 7 Vayus listed may seem out of place, but actually may not. By the law of inertia, an object in motion or rest continues in its state until and unless forced to change its state by an external force. Perhaps Avaha refers to this deterrent force that stops anything that is being carried, or a latent force that prefers non-movement, or both.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 2.
We call both gods touching heaven, Indra and Vayu, for drinking Soma offering. Spacefaring divinities. Indra and Vayu may have a role to play in heaven too. Heaven, or outer space, constantly produces particle-antiparticle pairs. They are called virtual particles because they are very short-lived and quickly annihilate each other. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle allows energy to be borrowed for a short period of time, which accounts for the mass of the virtual particles. Although this appears to violate energy and momentum conservation laws, the ephemerality of the pairs produced allow this to happen. An interesting consequence of this is when virtual particles are created near a black hole. If one particle enters the black hole and the other doesn't, then the black hole must lose mass to compensate. This is Hawking radiation, which can ultimately cause black holes to evaporate. The regulatory processes of Indra in this situation are represented by the cited conservation laws, Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and Hawking radiation. The rhythmic and cyclic product of particle-antiparticle pairs and their quick annihilation is the force of Vayu at work. This explanation again is only an attempt to correlate a Vedic visualization to a concept from contemporary science on the following premises. A. Both Vedic texts and signs of the current era are records of truth and hence can be correlated within the common area of their expressions. B. Heaven in Vedic parlance refers to outer space. C. Vayu is neither air nor wind, but a collective of forces that cause different flow patterns and is referred to as the air element because wind flow patterns are the directly and commonly perceptible phenomenon representing the action of this force collective. Indra is a regulatory mechanism that regulates the action of the forces of Vayu according to universal laws.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 3.
Indravayo mano viprahravanta bhutaye sarasrakshadhiyaspati.
Seers. They call Indra and Vayu, swift as mind, thousand-eyed, the masters of thoughts. Immortals and quantum mechanics. In a verse of an earlier Suktam, it had been speculated that spontaneous activities found in inorganic compounds could perhaps be associated with actions of the immortals and deliberated organic activity with mortals, as such compounds, particularly those associated with larger mortal body structures, exhibit this tendency. Subatomic particle interactions, too, are of the spontaneous kind, and so if the association of immortals with inorganic chemical expression were to be correct, then subatomic particle interactions can also be viewed as expressions of the immortals. This attempted correlation is seen to be consistent with processes of Earth's atmosphere, the fusion reaction within the Sun's core, and solar activity upon its surface, and the rhythmic pair production and annihilation activity in space. Logically, spontaneous exertions require great swiftness of action, and arguably, the swiftness of thought or mind can be assumed to outpace every other movement, including that of light. This is the swiftness that the immortals must possess, and perhaps do. As their areas of operation is humongously vast by mortal standards, they should be omniscient as well. possess innumerable eyes by human reckoning, and have considerable power of discrimination to be able to carry out their mandated tasks, making them, again in human reckoning, masters of perception and comprehension. One can observe a reasonable connect internally between the notions expressed across Vedic hymns and verses, as well as externally between Vedic ideas and contemporary science. Even if some of the correlations seem preposterous at first glance, should the noticed consistencies persist over the entire body of Rigvedic text, one could perhaps raise the guarded wariness that linger in our minds to the pedestal of conviction. Basic truth of existence and natural laws cannot be era-specific. They have to be consistent over the duration of existence.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 4.
मित्रम् वयम् हवामहे वरुणम् सोमापीतये यज्ञानाभूतदक्षसा.
We call Mitra Varuna for Soma drinking, who are born pure-minded. Purity and impurity. In life, pure-mindedness comes with living by truth, for truth, and in truth. This is an easy recipe, but a tall task. It goes against the instinctive tendency of mortal life forms to grant primacy to truth rather than the self. This instinct is what is sought to be quelled by emphasizing and repeatedly impressing upon the mind to sacrifice self-importance and develop a universal point of view with truth as the guiding principle in all our actions. No mortal is born pure-minded. The instinct of self-importance and self-promotion begins from the time of conception, when numerous sperms attempt to outpace each other to reach the ovum and impregnate it. The ovum too is said to have its preferences and lets in only the sperm that it finds to its liking and satisfactorily endowed. The next big moment of cementing self-importance comes after the child is born and is given a name, which becomes its lifelong possession and identity. Many other situations constantly buttress this notion until the child becomes an independent being, followed by more competitive situations involving education, profession, marriage, friendships, enmities, children, and grandchildren. Naturally, it will take quite a bit of effort to unlearn and reverse all this. Immortals, on the other hand, do not have to go through this process. They are born almost instantaneously at the dawn of creation, are manifestations of the unmanifest truth, do not have names, their supposed identities provided by mortals by projecting their limited understanding upon the immortals. They aren't even separate entities, but different facets of a single truth. They are deemed to be distinct by mortal mind constructs. Given these antecedents, they cannot but be pure-minded. Purity can be said to be a trait where an entity stands by principle always. Both Mitra, the sun, and Varuna, the waters, measure up to this standard, and they do so by mortal reckoning too.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 5.
ऋतेन जावृता वृथा ऋतस्य ज्योतिषस्पति तामित्रा वरुणाहुवे.
I call the two masters of light, Mitra and Varuna, who both are fosterers of truth by truth. Greater gods and lesser gods. There is an hierarchy among gods too, needless to mention, mortal projected, as everything else about the notion of God is, based on how long they are able to project a particular expression or functionality. The observed or truthfully extrapolated changes in expression and functionalities are also born of truth, but a greater one, as seen from the human viewpoint. Take the case of the sun. It is born of a molecular cloud that collapses under the influence of gravity to become the sun we know. According to the life cycle of a star, the sun being one, there will come a time when, due to the progressively reducing potency of the fusion reaction in its core, it bloats in size to become a red giant, and then, shedding much of its outer layers, becomes a white dwarf. Upon being a white dwarf, it will have two ways to go. The first will be to shrink further and explode to smithereens as a supernova and become a molecular cloud once again. The second will be to continue to shrink and get denser until it becomes a black hole, radiates mass, and returns to the state of a molecular cloud. Water, too, comes to be initially as remains of the firstborn stars that explode as supernovae. They become active participants in the process of the formation of planets and moons and appear as liquid water when environmental conditions are right. Some of these planets are devoured by their expanding red giant stars, and others drift away, are captured by the gravity of other stars, and experience a similar fate. When the cycle is viewed as the defining truth, both Mitra and Varuna qualify as gods, but lesser ones than a Vishnu, an Indra, or a Brahma, who exhibit their articulations uniformly and constantly, and so are greater gods in the eyes of duality-bound humans.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 6.
वरुणः प्राविता भुवन् मित्रो विश्वाभिरूतिभिः करतान्नः सुराधसः.
Varuna, do become guardian, Mitra, with all assistances, do make us to have proper application. The bounties of Mitra and the justice of Varuna. Mitra is the liberal neighborhood uncle who always has a gift in hand for his doting nieces and nephews, pampering them to the point of their becoming spoilt brats, much to the chagrin of their parents, who themselves are beholden to the bounties showered by the said uncle in an expansive spirit of altruism. Varuna, on the other hand, is the stricter of the parents of every such brat, concerned about their spoiled child growing up to be an indisciplined adult, who takes corrective steps to prevent this eventuality. Varuna, or water, has this character of polarity, which distinguishes everything as being good or bad, as white or black, with no shades of grey whatsoever. Water accomplishes this sifting, sieving, and straining process quite easily with inorganic compounds. To deal with many of the indissoluble organic compounds, water fosters bacterial life forms in itself to break these adamant organics down to dissoluble segments and then takes appropriate actions to achieve its goal. Their respective roles in the scheme of existence makes Mitra the bounteous benefactor and Varuna the strict guardian and worshipped as such. Both are necessary for a mortal to live a full and happy life. There is a carefree child in every adult and a perceptive adult in every child, with Mitra catering to both children, Varuna doing likewise to the adults, and both children and adults realizing the need for the presence of a liberal benefactor and a strict guardian to shape their personalities for their own and the society's well-being. This existential design is applicable across systems of the universe. Perhaps this is one mortal-centric perception that applies universally, fractal expression in reverse. And why not? Mortals are, after all, potential immortals and should be given their due.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 7.
मरुत्पन्दम् हवामहरिन्द्रमा सोमपीतये सयोर्गणेन दृम्पतु.
We call Indra, verily, attended by Maruts, for Soma drinking. Together with host, let him be satisfied. Indra and his professional associates. One of the main roles of regulatory system of the atmosphere, Indra, is to normalize heat in the earth atmosphere combined, the heating caused primarily by its exposure to the sun. This heating is not uniform, considering the earth's spin around its axis, the tilt of the axis, and the curvature of the earth's surface. Localized heating causes an increase in air pressure in that area, making heated air to rise up and colder air from the surroundings to rush in to take its place, causing wind that forms different patterns of flow influenced by the Earth's rotation around its axis, uneven heating over land and water bodies, and heat radiation by the Earth at night time. Severe conditions of pressure, volume of air that is involved in the process, and temperatures to which heating occurs can make winds to become violent in different ways from the perspective of the mortals affected by it. Such wind phenomenon are referred to as the Marut Gana or host of Maruts. From the perspective of Indra, Surya, Varuna, Prithvi and the Maruts, it would be just another day out, perhaps a bit different from the previous one. Based on these facts, Puranic texts variously describe them as being Devatas or Asuras or a separate class of deities, depending upon which of these many originating forces of wind, the sun, earth, or waters, play the primary role in their appearance according to the human viewpoint, or perhaps according to local conditions in the region that the composer of a particular Puranic text resided and had experience of. The commonality between all these various Puranic perspectives and those of the immortals involved, the Maruts, whatever class of personified beings they may be, and the beneficiaries or victims of this atmospheric phenomenon, is that Indra and the Maruts together regulate the atmosphere and do so ably, hence represent truth, a fact that needs to be acknowledged and celebrated.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 8.
इन्द्रज्येष्ठामरुद्गणा देवासः पूषारादयः विश्वे मम श्रुताहवम्.
Troops of Maruts with Indra as their senior, universal gods, generous protectors, do hear my call. Profundity of Vedic thought. Like Vayu, Maruts too should be a special class of very strong forces that are universally active. Take our closest star, the Sun. There are 4 different stormy events associated with it, comparable to our own typhoons, tornadoes, or tropical storms, except that they are proportionally more violent and devastating, considering that the Earth to Sun mass ratio is 1
Against
333,000. These solar phenomena are A. Proton storm, B. Geomagnetic storm, C. Coronal mass ejection, and D. Solar flare. All planets of the solar system, even those with a minimal atmosphere as compared to that of the Earth, witness such events. The aurora borealis and aurora australis are caused by solar storms. The Earth's magnetic field and its atmosphere transform this stormy effect into a beautiful spectacle. But for this protective cover, mortals on Earth would be adversely affected, if not worse. When galaxies crash into each other, they cause galactic storms. Perhaps the forces in action when matter is sucked into a black hole correspond to the forces that cause a tornado, except that the ratio of the two forces at work will be mind-bogglingly disproportionate. Obviously, by Vedic axioms and their articulation, there will be an Indra to each of these systems and an associated host of Maruts helping to regulate happenings and keep order. Back home, there are storms in a teacup, as well as figurative typhoons, tornadoes, and blizzards that plague our minds and thoughts during our weaker and calamitous phase, which too may have a definite correlation to the physical forces called the Maruts, and an Indra regulating them to ensure that they do not get out of hand. Visualizing this range of activities attributable to a force that has a varied set of expressions highlights the profundity of Vedic thought.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 9.
अथ वृत्रम् सूदानमहिन्द्रेण सहसा युजा मानो दुःशंस ईशत.
Munificence with Indra, the powerful ally, do slay darkness called Vritra. Let one who threatens evil not rule over us. The beauty of duality. The beauty of duality is that there is always the other side to everything. If there is a bad, there is bound to be a good as well. It is so with the actions of Maruts also. They are devastating and disastrous to some, but fortuitous and favorable to some others, wherever they operate and express themselves. In our Earth's atmosphere, their primary beneficial contribution is to achieve temperature balance between the poles and the equator that get heated by the sun disproportionately. Indra is always trying to spread the wealth of warmth around the world, and storms are a way that this is done, marshalling the might of the Maruts. They bring rainfall to rain-shadow regions. As storms make landfall, their wind blows spores and seeds further inland from where they would normally fall. This effect can be seen 1,000 miles inland as storms move away from the shoreline. These seeds can replenish and spread plant life. As tropical cyclones move across the oceans, winds and waves toss the water's contents, oxygenating them, which rejuvenates aquatic life. The plight of each of these forms of life benefited by storms can be described to be one where they are threatened by the evil of Vritra or darkness,
and the Indra Maruts combine
bestow mitigation. Life cannot be just human-centric. Unless other life forms thrive and flourish too, humans would find it difficult to survive. The immortals in focus ensure that. As always, maintaining equilibrium and balance between needs and availability is their only everlasting goal, even if a few are required to be discomfited in the process.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 10.
Isvan devan havamahe marutastoma vidayen ugrahi vrishni mataraha.
We call all Maruts divinities for Soma drinking because they are mighty, born of a mottled cow. Maruts demystified. A cow being a repository of truth in Vedic metaphoric parlance, the phrase born of a mottled cow perhaps indicates that the Maruts are combinations of diverse mottled forces of nature displaying equally diverse expressions. Their seeming relevancy, might, and versatility in shaping situations that range from the material bodies of earthbound mortals to galactic clusters is an attestation to it. In some Puranic texts, Maruts are also called Rudras, a name derived from the verb root rud, which means to howl. Strong winds accompanying storms, as also causing them, do make a scary howling sound. We will consider a set of 11 names attributed to Rudras who are synonymous with Maruts and what they mean. They are Nriti, dancing. Tropical storms and tornadoes appear to be wind pirouetting in abandon. Khara, hurtful. All storms are hurtful and injurious. Pingala, yellowish brown in color. Tornadoes and sandstorms have this color. Kapali, skull-wearer, menacing as a skull-wearer. Mrigavyadha, deer hunter. The movement of all storms are quite erratic, like a hunter going after his kill. Dahana, destructive. All storms are destructive. Kapardin, shaggy. They do look shaggy and ominous. Aparajita, invincible. Until the time they exhaust their potential, storms are invincible. Senani, commander. Maruts display every trait of a successful commander. One can notice that most of these epithets are common to all entities who qualify to be Maruts and possess the visualized functionalities. The deduction that can be made from this is that maruts can be equated to various expressions of the weather phenomenon, whose variations occur according to surface conditions, latitudes, seasons, etc.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik 11.
जयतामिवदन् चतुर्मरुतामेति धृष्ट्वा यच्छुभम् याचना नरः.
Thunder of maruts goes like confident march of victorious when mighty word proceeds towards eminence of truth. The synchronized dance of balance and change. Maruts, under the leadership of Indra, are seen as agents of change, a change back to balance, or the readjustment of a system gone zestless by habitual activity or critical by overuse, or destabilized by excessive or skewed input of resources in order to rejuvenate it. Balance, which is the standard sought to be maintained by the universal or any subsystemic process, is the mighty word mentioned in the verse, the truth, whose force impels Indra and the Maruts into action every time an imbalance arises. Being invincible by definition, they march with a sense of purpose as they set about their assigned task. Victory being a foregone conclusion, they brim and sizzle with confidence, lightning and thunder that punctuate their march being indicative of it. Every era of existence has a predominant principle that guides the thought processes of life extant in it. Balance seems to have been this principle in the Vedic era. As balance promotes stability, the duration of an era, with this being the defining principle, should be long-lasting, despite occasional and inevitable disruptions that are quickly and adeptly contained by the force of the principle. When fidelity to the principle is gradually and inevitably diluted, as change is another universal principle that works in tandem with balance and sometimes at cross purposes. This perhaps is the reason that Vedic thought divides time into cyclical sections, each with 4 eras, ranging from the most balanced and long-lasting to the least balanced and short-lived, referring to them as Satya, Treta, Dwapara and Kali Yugas.
Mandalam 1, Suktam 23, Rik
12.
अस्काराद्विद्युदस्पर्यतो जाता बन्धुनः मरुतो मृळयन्तु नः.
Let maruts, born all around of illuminating sheet lightning, animate us. May they cause delight to us. Cyclical eras and cycle revivals. That truth, or science as it is known in today's era, was understood and applied from very long in the past can be deduced from this verse, which declares that air around the path of lightning expands rapidly, causing thunder. This deduction, that ancients knew it, is not to belittle the current era, its claims, and the principles upon which it is based. If eras have been delineated in such a manner that define the principles that guides activities in them, then this era with its dominant propensities is an inevitability. We either accept it as truth and live it in the spirit of adherence to truth, or overtly grin and covertly bear it. The first option keeps us balanced, while the second is to the contrary. Although the expressions of the natural forces, specifically Indra and the Maruts in this context, must be the same across eras, their effects would be progressively diminished as the imbalance to contend with will be larger and more severe with the passing of each era in a cycle due to the infidelity to the laws of nature or truth or Sanatana Dharma on the part of extant mortals under the influence of the dominant propensities of the era. This will entail reciprocal severity of expressions from the immortals to counter what they confront. When this confrontational countering snowballs to a state that is beyond the withstanding capability of mortals, there is a reset of the cycle, which is called pralaya. That means towards adherence to truth. Pralaya is generally associated with destruction, but it must more appropriately be associated with revival. It may seem paradoxical that both fidelity and infidelity to truth is truth, but that is indeed the way the universe is organized. If you found this video informative and relevant, please like and share it. If you would like to see more such videos in this ongoing series, please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you for viewing.